All right, everybody, we're going live. It's Thursday. It is the fourth day in a row of Blazor events. Here with Blazing into Summer, and joining me today is Chris Sainty, Microsoft MVP. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, not bad, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I just realized I left the name badge up. So you're Daniel Roth today. Got some big
Oh,
shoes to
wow.
fill.
Big upgrade. Big upgrade, that.
So I'm going to fix that in the background here as we get started. Today we are talking about authentication in Blazor. So authentication is kind of a tricky subject in general. It usually requires something on the server, something on the client. So we're going to kind of get into the basics of how to do all that in Blazor today. All right, so your name is now fixed. You're back to normal, Chris.
Phew. Yeah, that's way too much to live up to.
So we've got plenty of folks joining us in the chat room today. Thanks everybody for coming along and joining us for the fourth day in a row of Blazing into Summer. Let's go ahead and get started, Chris. Let's take a look. Where should we start? Should we start at like maybe file new project and see what type of things are available from there? We've got some specialized components we can dig into that deal with showing different types of UIs depending on authentication state.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we can go through sort of creating a new app with Auth, and then have a play around with some of the stuff. Maybe look at some of the common bits of like issues people hit, maybe sort of customizing and changing like some of the identity login pages and stuff like that might be quite a cool thing to look at as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got your screen sharing now. We can always do some live share if we need to, and then I can always switch over to my screen if we need to demo something on my end. Feel free to get started there, Chris, and I'll jump in as needed.
Cool. Okay, so let's go through creating a new app with some Auth in it. So we're going to select the Blazor app here. I'm just going to leave that as the default name. 62. I'm going to get in triple figures soon. So yeah, so here we're going to get to the create new Blazor app screen. I'm going to pick a Blazor WebAssembly app. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the Asp Net Core hosted template. So we have a back end, so we can sort of make this more realistic. And then I'm going to go to authentication here. I'm just going to hit change, and I'm going to select individual user accounts. Now, there's not any other configuration options to pick here. So we're just going to go with that, hit OK. And then I'm going to create the app, and Visual Studio is going to spin up and do all of that for us, which will be cool. And then we'll have a look at what it's actually produced for us and sort of maybe poke around a bit and see what's going on.
So some folks are having a hard time seeing. These things are a little bit difficult to stream sometimes, but we've got the font size bumped up. Chris, if it doesn't impact the way your machine works, if you can change your resolution to the like 1080p.
Yeah, that's my bad. Actually, I should have done this before I started. I do apologize, everybody who's watching.
You're fine. These, like we were talking about before the show started, this is the state of software in 2020. Like we're still jumping through all these hoops to share video online.
Is that a bit better for people?
It should be better. Yeah, I think that's about the best we're going to get there.
Yeah, that's cool.
They'll be able to see your code much better, which I think is the important part.
Yeah, once the code opens, that should be a lot better. So
chat room is happy by the way.
Everyone seems to be happy, don't they? Excellent, cool. So anybody who's been doing the Blazor bits, you probably recognize this template. So the hosted template gives us 3 projects. So we have a server project, which is Asp Net Core project, a shared project, which is just a .NET standard class library, and then we've got the client project, which is our WebAssembly project. So because we selected that auth option when we were creating this template, this has actually all been enabled. So the server, for example, if we open up the weather forecast controller and go in here, We can see that we've got an authorized attribute now on our server. So our server is protected. We're going to have to provide some credentials now to be able to access these endpoints from our WebAssembly app. So that's cool. And we're going to come back and look at all that in a bit more in a second. And then if we go into the Blazor app, if we look at the fetch data page here, we can see again we've got that authorized attribute, so we're going to need to be authorized to be able to access any of this as well. So let's spin this up.
While that runs, I think it's worth pointing out some really simple security basics for those that might not be familiar. You showed the attribute for authorize on the client and the server. It's always important to authorize at both ends of the application. Because I could go into something like Telerik Fiddler or some other type of application and just start submitting posts to your web API controller. And if you don't have an authorized token on that web API controller, I'm going to be able to update records on your database. So it's always important to, first of all, never trust the client and put an authorized token there, and put one on your server as well, because you don't know where that request is coming from.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. I mean, effectively, what we're saying when we're doing client-side authorization is really we're just providing a good user experience for the people who are following along and doing what they should. Because, like you said, at the end of the day, the code is sitting with the user. They can decompile it. They could play around with it. If you're hiding menu options, they can tweak that to show them again. So you always need to keep the main, your main resource, your server, protected primarily. And everything else is just kind of a nice coating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So now we've got the app running. It looks very similar to the normal file new project for a Blazor WebAssembly app, except at the top here, we've got a few different options. So we've now got this login and this register. So this is quite important because the homepage and the counter page, they're as standard. We can do the usual things on here. But if we go to the fetch data page, we actually get redirected now because it's got that authorized attribute. So this is probably a good point to tackle quite early on, because I know this comes up quite a lot when we're talking about authorization in Blazor WebAssembly. The eagle-eyed among people watching will notice that we are now no longer in a Blazor WebAssembly app. We are now using the identity system. We are now on the server. This is server-rendered pages. So I know a lot of people ask, like, why is there not these pages built into the Blazor templates? I asked this question. It was something that I was curious about. Funnily enough, on the Asp Net community stand-up last week, I think it was a week before, when they had the Blazor special, Steve Sarnason actually mentioned on there that part of the reason they've gone with this is because there is a bit of a discussion in the security community about whether sign in and sign up pages on a SPA are good. Like, can they be trusted? Can the user trust that the page is who they say they are? So when it's server rendered, that potentially gives more more assurance that the page you're signing into, the app you're signing into, is who they say they are. So that's what Steve mentioned. So I think there's that, and I think there's obviously that, at the end of the day, there's the Asp Net team have got a load of really good identity stuff already built. So tapping into that is obviously quite handy when you're, sort of trying to prioritize work and distribute resource and stuff like that. So
there's also a lot of upkeep involved. I had a little chat with Daniel Roth about this yesterday. So they're providing the Razor Pages experience, but if you think about how many other ways you could do authentication, they would be kind of in the boat where they need to support like every front end imaginable. If you start adding, Blazor, and then somebody's going to want an Angular, somebody's going to want React, and then before you know it, the Asp Net team is Vue. The Asp Net team is only so big, and they can't be updating 7 different login or identity pages, and there's like 100 pages I think in the entire thing, which we can show in a minute. Definitely. I don't want to interrupt you too much. There's one question here that I think pertains to this page, though, so I'm going to ask you, and I think I know the answer as well. Can we add third-party auth here like Google and Twitter and other providers?
Yeah. So when we pick this template and we go this route for setting up authentication, the underpinning provider for this is Identity Server, which is just an OIDC provider or compliant server. So that supports third-party logins and things like that. So they can be configured and set up, and they would actually show basically where this bit is. It's saying there's no external auth configured right now, but if we configured one, so say we configured Google, for example, then we'd get like a little Google login with Google button, or Facebook or whatever the third-party provider happened to be. So that's all perfectly configurable. There's loads of information and docs specifically about how to do all that on the MS Docs site.
Looks like there's a link right there on the page.
Yeah, you can actually follow this article right here. So if we jump on here, it will go through and tell you exactly how you can set all of this stuff up. So it's really well documented and pretty straightforward to get going with. Cool. So we're not going to do that. We're going to set up a user account and we're going to have like a local database. Now, I think nowadays it's probably considered, most people probably could say that it's probably ideal not to do this yourself unless you really have to. Sort of having something like Azure AD, Azure AD B2C, those sort of services where you don't have to store username and passwords. Otherwise, you might end up in have I been pwned someday, which I don't think anyone wants to do. So yeah, but if you do have a requirement, internal apps, things like that, then this is a great way to get up and going. So we're going to just go through registering a new user. So I'm just going to do myself here, and I'm going to do some like super secure password that's definitely not password 1. Cool. So I'm going to hit register now. So this is going to now give us this message. So basically what's going to happen is in the background, Entity Framework is going to want to spin up a create a DB for us and stuff like that. So we just need to apply the migrations to create the DB schema to store all of this information. So that all happens automatically. You just click that button and then that goes through, and then we will give this a refresh. Oh, no, didn't like that. Now we try again. There we go. Cool. So as it says, normally you can do this by sending an email out and having people confirm that their email address is valid and all this kind of stuff. But because we're just doing this testing, we're just going to click here to confirm it manually, which confirms the email. So we've got our account now, so I can come back here and I can log in. Cool. And do that. And then we come back to our Blazor app, and now we're authenticated. So you can see that it's saying, hello, chris@example.com up here now. We're seeing our weather forecast data. So that was on that protected API that we looked at when we very first created it. So everything's kind of working as we expected. I can click up here if I want to, and this takes us back into that server-ended identity bits, and we can add some extra data. I can put a phone number in here. I can like change my email or whatever, password, 2-factor auth. We can do all of that stuff if we want to, but we're kind of not really interested in that. So we'll go back to our Blazor app for now. So that's all good.
While you're on this part of the demo here, Chris, I think it's worth mentioning, if you can hop back over to Visual Studio for a sec, you ran the scaffolding, not scaffolding, you ran the migration through a simple button click right there in the application in the browser. It probably created a local DB database for this application, which I don't think you'll be able to see in your solution tree, right?
Yeah, you won't see it over here. I think if we, I just need to ping open another window because I don't tend to look at these, but I think if we go through, I think it's the server, is it Server Explorer? No, that's the wrong one. Where is it on here? SQL Server Object.
Yeah, I think it's
this the one? That one, isn't it?
Yeah. So there should be a local DB for this app. Now, here's something that's very interesting that I found. Actually, one of my viewers found it when I was doing a similar topic the other day. If you run the same template from the command line, since the command line is kind of understood to be a platform agnostic area to do development, it will actually scaffold the same project, but instead of using local DB, it will use SQLite by default.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And something else that's really interesting is there are no options in Visual Studio's dialog boxes to change it. So you can't go in and like flag it and say use SQLite instead. But there is a pile of options in the command line for different types of databases and scaffolding options for identity when you're making your project. So those are worth checking into if you're interested in this.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. Oh, yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, I never knew that. That's cool. Okay. So, yeah, we can see here, this is actually what was created by running those migrations. So we can see we get all these Asp Net tables that are created that sort of hold all our roles and claims and tokens and various other bits of data. So, yeah, so that's what those bits are doing. So we'll get rid of that. We don't want that for the moment. Cool. So, yeah, so anyway, we've got our app up and running. This is all cool. So what this is, what this authentication is under the hood is token-based authentication. So as I said, the underlying provider here is Identity Server. So the Blazor sort of authentication system is based on Oid C. And what we're going to do is every time we kind of talk to the server, we're going to send a token with our request. The server will get that token. It will then check it to make sure it's valid and all this kind of thing. And we can store stuff in there like roles and other claims and bits about what we can access. And we'll have a look at that in a little bit about sort of doing authorization as well as authentication and bits and bobs like that. We can actually see some of this stuff as well. So I'm going to open the browser tools and I'll zoom in a bit here as well. So some of this stuff actually gets saved where we can actually poke around and look at it. So we can see here in the session storage, this is where we actually have the ID token for me, for my identity that I've just logged in as. So I can actually like copy some of this, and you can go and look at some of this. Like, so you can go look to like jwt.ms, that one, and you can like decrypt this stuff. So if I paste that in there, oh, that's gone horribly wrong. That's not ideal. Hold on, let me just get rid of some of that.
So while you work on that, I'm going to answer a question real quick here in chat. Somebody was asking about a very specific provider called Keycloak. And can you use the normal OIDC provider or protocol with Asp Net Core? I'm not sure about that specific one, but I do know that you can write your own providers if they are if they support the OAuth protocol. So if they're OIDC compliant, you should be able to roll your own. There's an interface. It's been a long time since I've written one of these, but there's an interface in .NET Core that you just need to make sure your custom service implements, and then it's up to you to do the handshaking, which is actually kind of a complex task to do. So hopefully you know a little bit about authentication if you're doing that. You could also search NuGet and see if there's any providers that somebody else has put together. For example, I had to write one for Yammer at one point. And I thought it was kind of ironic that a Microsoft product like Yammer didn't have a authentication provider for ASP.NET Core, and I had to go in and write my own. Took a few days, but I was able to do that. And I think there's a blog post out. It's been a while, so some of these namespaces might have changed by now, but I think that was on It's on the Redgate website that I wrote that for, but I gave a complete breakdown of how to do that. I can find that and I'll post it in the chat room as we move on with the show. It's going to take me a few minutes to find it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry, I'm just playing around my different tokens here. So because we get there's these two different types of tokens that we get, which is an ID token and an access token. So the ID token kind of tends to contain the information about like who you are. It might have like your name and bits and bobs like that. And then you have an access token, which is the thing you actually use to like access a particular API.
The bearer is...
That's it. Yeah. So the access token is what you'd use in a bearer authentication header when you're making a request. So I was just trying to decrypt those, but they actually didn't have in them what I thought they were going to have. So I'm just going to move quickly past that.
Yeah, I can do a demo in a little bit about the bearer token and how to get that out of, because you actually need to request that from the server. It's not stored in the client. So you have to go out to the server, request it, and then you can pull it back into the client and use it for, say, a file upload or something. So there are ways to access that once you're in Blazor.
Yeah. Cool. So let's sort of, now we've seen that kind of working from a user perspective. I thought it might be cool now. Let's go and actually look at the code and see like how like these things work and go together in bits. So in the server project, let's start there because like we were saying earlier, first principles, secure your server before you do anything else. So in the server, if we scroll down on the startup file, there's some bits that get added here. So for starters in configure services, there's some various stuff that gets added to set up the whole identity system. So for starters, we have the add default identity, which is the Asp Net identity system that adds all of the services and sort of bits and bobs that are related to that. Then we've got the add identity server, and that's again, that's setting up a lot of the services that are used by the underlying identity server provider that's used. And then we're using add authentication, which adds a load of services for ASP.NET Core that make authentication work. And then specifically, we're saying we want to use identity servers, JSON Web Tokens. So that adds some additional bits around that as well. So that's the kind of setting up all the services for DI and stuff like that. And then down in configure in the middleware pipeline, then we've got some other bits in there. So down here, we're saying we're going to use identity server. So that sets up that in the middleware pipeline. And then we're using authentication and authorization. So that sets up all of that so we can check like requests are authenticated and all this kind of stuff. So that's the kind of configuration on the server end.
So there's an interesting gotcha in here. Those three lines need to be between use routing and use endpoints.
Yeah, good point.
So you will get a warning in your compiler output if you move those. I noticed this. I tried to wrap those in a simple local function just to identify that like those three were adding my authentication bits, and apparently the compiler didn't like that either. So even though they were happening where they're supposed to, the compiler came back and it said these three lines need to be between use routings and use endpoints, or you might not get authentication working like you expect.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it, with middleware? It's important what order things are in. It's quite good as well that the compiler's like intelligent enough to be able to tell you that. Because otherwise you could be kind of scratching your head wondering why stuff isn't working how you're expecting when actually it's all to do with how things are ordered. So that's pretty cool. Cool. So that's so that's kind of the high level setup stuff, and all of this is kind of taken care of you by the project template and gets you up and going. We've already looked at the controller and seen that once we've got that stuff set up in the startup, all we've got to then do is use the authorized attribute wherever we want to protect something. So in this instance, it's at the controller level. So any endpoints on this controller are going to require the user to be authorized. But we can also do that at the kind of individual level. So instead of decorating the entire controller with authorized, we could just decorate a particular endpoint, so that you can protect some endpoints on a controller, but not all of them. So that's worth knowing if you haven't used this before. So yeah, the only other thing that's in here as well is the Oid C Configuration Controller, which again is something that gets scaffolded out for you as part of the template process. To be honest, I just don't play around with this. I just leave it alone and let it do its thing. So that's all, like I say, it's set up to work sort of with this default template. I believe you can kind of you can use it to kind of deal with like multiple clients, I think, and stuff like that. But in all honesty, I've not played around with this particular setting too much. So it's definitely probably worth checking out the docs if you want to fiddle around with anything on this particular controller.
I'm pretty sure that's where your access token comes from too, when you're trying to get that for your client, if you need to get the token to make a request.
Okay.
I believe it's routed through there. And then also a quick question from the chat room. Will we provide any information on configuring IAS on the server for Identity Server 4? I personally don't have any experience with that. I don't know about you, Chris.
No, we've moved. So where I work as well, we moved off of sort of IIS and doing that stuff, and we're fully in Azure, which is quite useful. And one of the things that we liked about moving to Azure was that basically we didn't have to do that kind of stuff because it can be fiddly. So yeah, unfortunately, no, I've not had really much experience with doing that with Identity Server either. So yeah, apologies there.
Same here. I've been out of the DevOps space for about 10 years, so I don't dabble too much on the deployment side of things anymore. I let experts handle that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So that's kind of all we're going to worry about in the server side, because to be honest with you, we really want to focus more on Blazor here, and like the server stuff is kind of a bit boring compared to the Blazor stuff. Let's face facts. So let's talk about what Blazor is actually doing. So let's have a look at the configuration bits for the Blazor app here. So when this template scaffolded out, there's some interesting things that happen to the template. So for starters, in the program main method, we get a HTTP client set up, and it's got this particular handler here, this base address authorization message handler. Now, this is an interesting gotcha, and one that I've seen a few people run into. And there's an interesting reason for that. What this particular handler does is it looks for tokens when you're making requests to protected APIs and attaches them to your HTTP client request, so you don't have to do it manually. So that sounds quite good on the surface of things, and it is. It works as we've seen running the app. It works exactly as we'd expect, which is perfect. The problem, however, is if you are trying to hit endpoints where you have a mixture of both protected and non-protected endpoints. Because this particular handler is always expecting a token to be required. And if you don't require one or you don't have a token, it actually throws an exception, and then your request won't go through and it all blows up. So if you're in a Blazor application that is going to hit unprotected endpoints, and then potentially someone is going to log in and then hit protected, fully protected endpoints, you actually need to set up 2 HTTP clients. Otherwise, then you specifically need to use the one that doesn't have this handler in it when you're making unauthorized requests.
Yeah, that one really caught me the other day. I was very confused why my requests weren't going through.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen a few people mention that. I was delving through the code when some of the OR stuff was being built, and yeah, I noticed in the source code for this particular handler, it tries to find a token, and then if it can't find one, it will deliberately then throw an exception because it always expects one to be there. So yeah, it's great that if you do everything out of the box and everything's protected, it just works. But if you do have to mix those endpoints, then you will need a second HTTP client registered specifically for non-authenticated requests. So if anyone's hit that, then yeah.
Yeah, we should probably circle back to that one in a few minutes.
Yeah,
when
well, that's what I was
we
thinking.
get
Yeah,
to the fetch data and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll come back to that one. So yes, that's all set up, and then we've got this add API authorization, and that's just adding some services as well that Blazor uses internally for kind of hooking up all of the authorization bits and across all of the components and stuff. There's loads of stuff that goes on in there, so we don't need to sort of go into the specifics of it, but a lot of it's like the internal stuff that makes all this sort of hold together. So that's the program file. In the app file, there's kind of two real changes here between the what's here by default in the non-authorized enabled template and this one. So the first one is that there's a cascading authentication state component that wraps the entire router, and that provides a authentication state task that any component in your app can then use to get the current authentication state of a particular user. That's used by all of the internal Blazor components that do auth, that are auth sensitive. It uses that to work out whether you're authenticated or not. So that's why that's there. And then there is a change as well. We have an authorized root view inside of the found template in the router. So normally that is just authorized. That's normally just called a root view component. And the only real difference between the root view component and the authorized root view is that the authorized root view understands things like the authorized attribute and whether someone is authenticated or not, and whether they're authorized or not to access something, because it can use the information that's passed in that cascading authentication state to check, basically. So if for example, if we're on the index page and we go to the fetch data page, the fetch data page there has that authorized attribute. So the authorized root view is kind of clever enough to see that and then go, okay, well, are you authorized? If you're not authorized, then it won't let us move to that page. And instead, we kind of drop into this not authorized template here. And we get redirected to the login screen, which we saw earlier when we first created the account for this, when we're going through this. If we are logged in and we're just not authorized, so this is maybe like because we're not in the right role, for example, then we'll actually drop through into this else block and we'll get this message saying you're just not authorized to access the resource. And obviously we can customize all this however we want or need to. So that's the changes in the app component. And then there's a few additional components which are in here, which aren't normally in here. So the first one, and probably one of the more simpler ones here to look at, is the login display. So this is the, if I just open my site again, this is just this section at the top here. That's what that does. So if we go in here, this uses something called the authorized view component. So the authorized view component is a great way to sort of show and hide UI depending on the authentication state of the user. So in this particular instance, the authorized view is being used with a couple of templates that it has within it. So we're saying for authorized users, what we want to do is display a nice welcome message. So we've got this hello, and then we saw a second ago it had like chris@example.com. So that's that bit. And then we've got the button to actually log out, which makes sense because we're logged in. And then for non-authenticated, non-authorized users, we want to show the register and the login buttons. So authorized view is really handy where you want to show conditional UI based on authorized state. And you can do lots of other things with this, and we'll probably explore some of this a little bit later. But with authorized view, you've got some additional stuff you can do. So when it's used plain, like we see here by default. So let me just get rid of that. Sorry, so I don't add confusion. This is just purely whether you're authenticated or not. There's no additional stuff. But for example, if we wanted someone in a certain role, so say we wanted admins for whatever reason, we could do this, and then we could say that here now it's going to say, well, you need to be authenticated, but you also need to be authorized in the role of an admin in order to access this stuff. So in this particular case, if the user wasn't in the role of admin, they would still see the not authorized template as opposed to the authorized template. So it's quite powerful, and it also works with kind of the newer policy stuff. So again, we can specify a policy here if we wanted to, and say, well, you have to meet the criteria of this policy in order to be able to view this content. Otherwise, you get spat out.
There's
so it's really
claims as well, I think, in there. If there's certain.
Is there a claims as well? Yeah.
Maybe not.
Is it claims?
I thought there was. Oops.
I think that sits under a policy stuff. I think when you're creating a custom policy, you can say a particular claim at that point.
Okay,
so
maybe that was what I was
think
thinking
it fits
of.
under that.
So yeah, one thing that's interesting here while we're talking about roles, we had a question early on. I answered it in chat, but I want to answer it out loud now that we're on the subject. They were asking if there's a way to manage roles through the scaffolding or any of the UI stuff. And the answer is actually no. Unless you know something I don't know, Chris. I talked to Dan about this yesterday, and I showed my age. So in the web forms days, you could go on IIS and run a command, and it would scaffold a site that would manage the users for the application. That is long since been removed from .NET. So that doesn't exist anymore. It's up to you to roll your own interface for managing users and roles these days.
Yeah. No, I don't know anything extra on that, unfortunately. That, like you say, it's all gone. I remember those days as well. But yeah, no, you roll it. Yeah, like say, you're rolling all your own UI now for that stuff. So
yeah, again, it probably goes back to there's just too many web front ends these days. So you would have people asking for the React version, the Angular version, the Blazor version. Yeah. It's just a big Pandora's
the team would spend
box,
half a year just maintaining those, wouldn't they? It's not doing anything else. Cool. So I think there's the only other thing I was going to say in this one is there is another template here that's not in by default on this one, which is called authorizing. And this is sort of the transition state between the two. So you're either authorized, you're not authorized, or we're working that out, which is what authorizing is. So here you can put sort of intermittent messages while sort of anything, sort of if there's a long-winded process for the auth to complete, for example, you can show like checking user credentials. I don't know, some kind of placeholder message just to show that something's going on if you want to. So I just want to quickly point that out as well and say that's there. And we might actually see that in one of the other bits in a bit actually. So yeah, so that's the authorized view and the login display and what that's doing. And we saw where that was setting in the template. There's a service as well that's injected here to do with the sort of managing the user session, if you like, if that's the right way to put it, in Blazor. So and that's for like this sign out manager. So this gets injected, and then you can see down here in the code block that we kind of await the sign out process, and then like it logs out, and all what that does is it cleans out all of the tokens and everything that we saw that was stored in session storage and stuff, so they all get blanked out, and then it kind of resets all the authentication state for the app so that you're signed out of everything, and all the UI gets refreshed so that all that happens. So that's all kind of taken care of for you by just calling that kind of one method, which is quite handy. So that's the login bit. We'll have a look at the redirect to login as well. It's a really simple component. It's got actually no marker, like no UI to it. So we saw this in the app component. If we just jump back here, when we're not authorized and we're not a currently logged in user, we get redirected to we get this redirect to login component is displayed. And as I said, it's got no UI. So actually it loads. The oninitialized lifecycle method fires, and then it just re-navigates us off to this authentication slash login URL with a return URL, which is sort of captured depending on like where we were trying to go and stuff in the app. So this is kind of a bit of the magic sauce really in Blazor WebAssembly, this authentication routable component or page component. That's where a lot of kind of the really funky stuff happens. So that's kind of the last bit we're going to look at in here. So that's in the pages, and it looks really simple, but this particular component is doing quite a lot of stuff. So when we land here, there's a token here called action in the root template.
So I'm going to give you a quick pause for a second, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry about the interruption, but Layla codes it just rated with a party of 40.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Layla. And I just want to kind of maybe recap really quick what we're doing for the 40 people that just showed up. Everybody that's coming from Layla's channel, this is day 4 of Blazing into Summer. It's a series that we're doing on Blazor. Every day this week we've covered different subjects on the topic of Blazor. And we did a recap on Monday, kind of got people into the basics. We did some full stack deep dive stuff on Tuesday to show how to interact with the front end using Blazor WASM and the back end using C# and Web API and .NET on the back. And then yesterday we had Daniel Roth on to talk about PWA apps with Blazor and all kinds of really cool stuff that's coming to the Blazor ecosystem. And then today we have Microsoft MVP Chris Sainty joining us to talk about authentication with Blazor in Asp Net. So that's where we're at now. We did a file new project, scaffolded out a brand new app, and we're kind of digging through all of the things that we get out of the box with that template. So you can take it from there, Chris.
Yeah, cool. So this is the authentication page component. So like I say, it doesn't look like a lot, but that remote authenticator view component is doing a lot of stuff. So what it does is it does different things depending on what the action is that you send to this particular page. So when we were on like login display, if you notice here, we're setting the we're doing the sign out, but then we're navigating to this authentication page, so the one that we were just looking at a second ago, and the action is to log out. If we go back to the app.razor and we go to, we want to go to that redirect to login. That's the one I was looking for. Sorry. So again, we go to the authentication page, but this time now the action is to log in. Okay. So it does these different things depending on what we send to it. So when we're logging out, it's going to do one set of stuff. If we're logging in, it's going to do another set of stuff. Like for logging in, for example, it's going to basically forward us on to wherever our identity provider is. So in our instance, it's our API, and that's where we go off and we then get those server-ended identity pages to sign in and sign up and all this kind of stuff. And it also does stuff on the redirect as well. So when we sign in on the server sends us back to the application, and the tokens bits and bob can be in the URL, and this is where that lands when it comes back. And then this remote authenticator view will like strip all of those tokens out and sort of store them in local storage and stuff like that. So it's doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things going on in this component. So it's kind of a bit ironic, really, that it's all fitted into like 7 lines of code. But it's really kind of the brain of everything that's going on with the authentication system. It
emits a lot of messages too. I think that's what you're getting into. Sorry if I preempted you there.
No.
It emits a lot of messages, and this is like it is a SPA application. So this thing emits a bunch of kind of just one-liner outputs into your view, and it's completely customizable. And Chris, I popped a gist over in your in your Skype window, if you want to take a look there, I've grabbed all the templates that you can find in that view from my app, and I paste them in there for you. There's a ton, so
yeah,
I'm just
that's
saving
brilliant.
you some typing.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That is much appreciated. Cool. Wow. Ping. So these are all of the things that you can customize for this component. So this is a great way, actually. So thank you so much for doing this, Ed. This is brilliant. It's a great way of showing everything that's going on. So what this component is dealing with is logging in. It's dealing with completing logging in successfully. It's dealing with logging ins failing. It's dealing with completing logouts, failed logouts, logouts succeeding. It's dealing with user profile updates and changes. It's dealing with registering and stuff like that. So putting these all in is brilliant because it really does highlight just how many things this component is responsible for and how much heavy lifting it's actually doing for us. And the great thing is with these templates, these little bits of UI are obviously popped up in various different stages. So if we go over here and we log out, we see processing logout up here. So that's one of those templates that we just saw being displayed while we're doing the logout process. So that's going through, and then we get this successfully logged out bit. So if we go here and have a look at this, let's see if we can play around with this a bit. So we've got logging you out there now. So if we go back here, I'm just thinking that should do a rebuild, and that actually should show that next time. Cool. So we're logged out now. Let's log in. Cool. So let's just remind ourselves. So while we're, where are we? Logging out. So yeah, sorry, that's going to say there, isn't it? So we're going to hopefully should see a message saying logging you out. So if we go log out, there we go. Very, very briefly.
Yeah, some of these are hard to catch. They're very quick.
Yeah, it's typical. The first time round, it sat there for ages and ages, and the second time round, when we really wanted to read it, it zipped by a million miles an hour. But if you watch the recording of this and pause it at the right moment, you will see that the message changed.
So they become really apparent when you have a very highly customized theme, and you have wrappers on things that predict a certain type of style. There's a selector that CSS is looking for, and then all of a sudden you log in and you see like a white box appear, and you're like, where did that come from? That's the problem I was having. So I had to come in here and add some custom stuff to make sure that the elements were wrapped correctly and it was emitting the right type of HTML, so I didn't get like weird little pops of unstyled information on my site.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because you really need to go looking at the docs to realize where this stuff comes from. Because obviously, when you first look at this particular component as it comes in the default template, you just see that those little 8 lines, and you're just like, oh, it can't be here. And obviously, as well, the remote authenticator view is coded as a self-closing component tag initially, so you don't even you have to take that off and give it an end tag, and then you can start playing around with the templates inside of it as well. So it's quite easy to be able to miss that you can customize all this stuff. But it's another great example, really, with kind of, I think, a lot of what I love about Blazor is that so much of it is customizable. Like, there's very few parts that you can't really get at to manipulate and change. And I really love that the team's thought about that and giving you that ability to sort of override, but they've given you sensible defaults as well, so you don't also have to get bogged down in it, which I think is cool. So that's kind of the extra components really that we get when we're doing the when we get the authenticate when we use the authentication template. So there's only a few extra bits really, but it obviously adds quite a lot of power to the app, which is quite cool. There's not really a huge else amount to do with like the default template. That's pretty much as is now. So we're like, cool, we could log in, we can create new accounts and do all this kind of stuff. Interestingly, bringing it back to one of the questions earlier about roles, is, as you probably have noticed so far and everything, there's literally nothing about roles here. There's sort of nothing saying like, like you said, Ed, there's no UI for us to create roles or do anything with those. There's no sort of role checks going on anywhere else for anything. But obviously, most applications do want to use roles in some way, shape, or form in order to sort of restrict access, within the app, even for authenticated users. So I wonder whether it might be worth just having a little bit of a play around now with roles and sort of seeing if we can get some stuff working with roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to hack it in directly into the database, or do you want to try to build a view to edit roles? How do you want to go about that?
Oh God, this could be an interesting one. Right. What could we do? Let's see. How brave am I feeling today?
I think we probably should start at least by going into the database, because if you don't understand where these roles are held, then you probably don't know how to write the code to add them and remove them anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So basically that's not the one I wanted at all. That's this one here. Let me just, if we go we'll view data on that one, and we will do view data on that one. Cool. So first of all, we have the Asp Net Rolls Table. So this is where you define your roles for your application. So let's start by doing that. For example, let's do that first. So I know for a fact the IDs here are GUID, so I'm just going to quickly just generate a GUID so we can use that. So we dump a GUID in there, and then we'll have a name. So any particular role name you fancy, Ed, or like?
I think like admin would be a pretty common one that we can use.
Let's go with admin.
Be too clever.
Yeah. So cool. We've got normalized, which is like, I don't know if you've got anything different there, Ed, that you ever use for normalized, but that's normally just, I think it's just like the name all uppercase, I think it is, or something by default, if I remember correctly.
I don't recall. It's been a while for me.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same again, but it's just all uppercase, so it can do comparisons without case sensitivity and bits and bobs, something like that anyway.
Probably.
And then we've got this concurrency stamp, and I can never remember what that was all about. Let's ping this open. What was that one? Columns. Yeah, it's just, I think I end up just I think we can just stick another GUID in there for now. That'll get us going. I don't know if anybody in the chat has noticed there's anything specific that's meant to go in there. I don't know whether I'm committing treason by doing this.
I'm doing the typical developer thing and looking it up on Stack Overflow right now. And it says it's used to prevent a concurrency update conflict.
Okay. Interesting.
So I guess if the user is trying to open two things at once, you can distinguish from the two sessions or something. Yeah,
maybe if you update it, you change the concurrency stamp, so give it a new GUID, and then you know that if someone's got an old one, it's stale. I don't know, something like that, maybe. I know I've done this before with this, and it works. So we'll go with this for now as it's working, and then we'll work.
Yeah, it looks like the system adds GUIDs to it as it needs them.
Okay, so that's cool. So we've got our admin role now. So that's great. And then we have this kind of join table, which is sort of where we can then assign the role, if you like, to the particular user. So in order to do that, I need to also open up and get my user ID. So this is my user that we went through when we created the account, we did the registration. So I need my ID from here. So I'll put my ID in, and then I'm going to grab the ID from the roles table, and I'm going to paste that in there. Cool. So that now, fingers crossed, should put me in the role of an admin. Now, I think we should be able to check that. Oh, no, we won't, because we need to do some other stuff first. Hold on. So sorry, that now is set up the database. So now I'm in that role, but out of the box, nothing that's been set up has been set up to use roles. So even though I'm in that role now, that role is not going to get put into my claims. It's not going to get put into the token that I'm going to get back on the from the API when I sign in and stuff like this. So while I'm in that role, there's nothing to kind of give me like to prove I am. Basically, it won't get incorporated into the token. So we need to do some extra bits in order to enable that. So I'm just going to jump over and grab some code for this one. So this is quite interesting. Sorry,
you're going through all the manual steps that we need to perform if we were to write a tool to add roles to the database.
Yes. Yeah. This bit. If we were writing a UI to assign roles to users and stuff, this is basically like how we would need to persist the data when we went to do it, and we'd just build some like a UI in front of it where we could say, right, here's my list of roles, here's my list of users, and I want to assign this user to that role and that role, and then but this is how it would actually get saved in the back end once we were done.
Yeah, so basically when I've built these, you take like a data grid or something and you list out all of the users, and then you make a fetch to the table that has all the roles in it and pull all the role names out, put them in a drop-down box. And then you kind of click on the username and then, select the role that they belong to. Actually, you might need to do like a multi-select because you have more than one role typically. But you select those things, and then this table's kind of a lookup table that binds the role with the user's ID.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right. Exactly right. Cool. So what we're going to do now is sort of sticking with the server side of things. We're going to do what we need to do now on the server side to get it to include roles when we authenticate as a user. Now, it's actually quite cool, this one, because I was reading up the specifics of this a little while ago in preparation for this show, in fact. And it was quite cool because there was some issues around the docs around this bit, and it was quite nice because I actually managed to be able to raise a PR to actually fix some of the doc stuff, which was quite cool. So that was quite handy. But in the server side, there's actually like a couple of options here that we have for how we include roles. So the first one is we can add in API Authorization Options. So to do that, we go to Startup, and basically, I'm going to grab some code. 1 second. Which one is it? That one. So if I just grab this quick. Cool. So what we can do is add these additional options when we're doing the call to add API authorization. And what this is doing is basically including the particular role claim information, or instructing the identity server, to include the role claims in the token back down to when it's being sent back down to the Blazor app. So this is it. That's kind of all we need to do now on the server. By doing this, this now enables the server to return tokens that include the role claims. So that's actually pretty painless. There's another. There's actually one more line as well I forgot to add as well. Sorry, and that's this one. This is. Let me just add a using as well.
So while you're working on this, I just want to mention real quick, there's a pretty good question in the chat room here about if you were to build a UI to manage your roles and users, where do you put it in your project separation of concerns? For me, when I built those, I would always put it in a separate application in a separate project altogether. And the reasoning for that is some of our apps, we would deploy a public website that had users logging in and accessing their data, but we didn't want the management portal outside of the firewall where somebody could log in remotely and access that. So that was an internal thing only behind our firewall. So it was a separated thing altogether. So only people within the organization inside the company firewall could access the portal that managed users and could add roles and edit user profiles and things like that. So we never put that outside of the company firewall. So that's how we handled it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, it's like everything with security. You just want to restrict everything as much as possible, and kind of always operate on the least privilege principle. And if you don't need people outside external access to change that stuff, it makes it slightly more secure by keeping it internal.
Yeah, you would hope, things like, I know we're probably not all writing things that are a bit as big as Facebook or Netflix, but you would hope that somebody can't go to netflix.com/admin and start editing like user profiles. Hopefully that is a separated concern completely, and it's on a different, domain and has its own space there. So that's kind of the idea is you don't build one soup to nuts application that can both host the user's information and has the ability to edit all of their records and do everything. Because if somebody gets control, then they have all of it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah. So as I was saying, that's kind of it really for the server side of things. This last line here is just to kind of stop the what's it referred to as the default mapping for the default JSON web token. I've seen this in there. If I'm completely honest, I'm not 100% sure exactly why the default mapping breaks. I think it's something to do with the schema name that's used for a role in the default claim mappings or something. It's not quite right. So you have to remove that in order for this to all work. So, but that when I've configured Identity Server in the past, that's something that's been there because that's been there from that, and obviously underlying all this is Identity Server. So I'm guessing that's why that's still in there. But as I mentioned, that's only one way. That's one way of doing it. There's another way of doing it using something called a profile service, but that is a bit more involved. You have to create a profile service which implements an interface called iProfile service, and then you have to register that with DI. Again, that's a mechanism from the underlying identity server, but this works for most cases. I'm not 100% sure of the specifics of the profile service advantages. I think it's because you can do some more bespoke stuff around it, because you are in a class and you can sort of check things and do more conditional logic and bits and bobs, I guess, before you do it. Whereas this is kind of a bit sort of a carte blanche approach, I guess. Sorry. Go.
There's a question in the chat room about handling roles from like Google authenticated or third-party authenticated users. I think, and feel free to answer this as well, Chris. I think what you would have to do is a little bit of manual code to map. You typically see this on other sites as well. You might authenticate with, say, Google or Twitter, but then you have an account with that service that you attach to those authentication providers. So you have a login for, let's say I have an example app called the Blazor Coffee Warehouse. I would have an account with the Blazor Coffee Warehouse that has a login with, say, Twitter. And then I bind that together with some custom code that says this user profile belongs to this Twitter authentication profile. And then you can also attach those roles through that connection as well. But it's very custom.
Yeah, it's almost like you kind of have, like, you keep the permissions system separate from the login, like the authorization and the authentication bit separate.
Yeah, there'd be some kind of lookup that says, this user's email and ID also has an account from this Twitter profile as well. And then when you log in, it can attach those things. And check roles through that, but it's all very custom.
Yeah, that might actually be a good example of where the profile service approach might be quite nice. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just create a profile service just so we can all actually see what it looks like. So I'm just going to ping this in here real quick. So we'll call this profile service.
It looks like Redshift is saying the same thing here in chat. You can use a profile service for a line of business application to store things like users, department, designation, managers, etc.
Yeah, I mean, you can see here we just got the ability to do a lot more custom stuff now because we are in a method. We can do a lot more procedural logic type things, and we could do anything custom here we really wanted to. So I think if you want to do anything overly bespoke, you can use a profile service to then sort of do that really specific logic to whatever your authentication requirements are. So yeah.
I think the main takeaway from the question is that you can, but it's not something that's kind of automated in any way. There's no like box to check or template to scaffold. It's very much custom coding.
Yeah, you're gonna be writing some code for that one. Yeah, definitely. Cool. So I'll ditch that out. We'll get rid of that quick. Cool. So we got that there. So that's like I said, that's it for the server. That's now the server is going to include the roles in the token, which is cool. The problem is now we need to turn our attention to the client because now that's actually not going to work as we expect either. So we need to do some work on the client side as well. So I'm just going to go and grab some code for this as well. So in here, going to add a new class. Cool. So of course, custom using factory. I'm just going to nab the code. We'll go and check all this out now. Let me add all of our various using statements in. Cool. So what we're doing here is we're essentially going to deal with extracting the claims from the token. Now, role claims are interesting. So when they come down when you're in a singular role, they come down as just sort of they come down with the claim name and the value. So they would be like role and then admin. So that's all fine, except when you have more than one role, because then they come down in an array, and that's not really how the claim system normally works. It's normally like a key value pair, and like you could have multiple roles as like multiple role claims, and they have multiple values, but that's not what happens here. We end up with a single role claim, but an array of values. So we need to unpack that. And this is what this is doing. So when we're coming through, we're checking that the user's authenticated, and then we're looking for role claims, and then we're extracting those role claims, and then specifically down in this area from line 40, we're specifically looking that if you've got more than one, you're in more than one role, we're then sort of we're extracting each of the roles out of that JSON array, which is why you're seeing things like JSON element in here. So that's stripping through and pulling all those out and feeding them into the identity, the claims identity, which is being constructed by Blazor. So that's a lot of boilerplate code. If you don't understand it, you kind of don't really need to. It's just kind of something you've just got to have in place. But at a high level, that's what it's doing. It's just either extracting a single role if you're in one role, or if you're in multiple roles, it's extracting them from that JSON array that they come down in. And we might be able to see that in a second, actually. So now we've got that bit in place. We just need to add this now into DI. So we go in here, we've got API Authorization. And then we're just saying, instead of using the default claims principal factory, we're just specifying this custom one that we've just added in. So we're just adding that in there, and that's it. Again, that's kind of that's all we need to do from that point of view. And then I'm just checking that I've got all the bits. Oh, I'll tell you what, I did miss something. Sorry, in the server side. So let me jump back over here. And then we also needed to add in this bit of this little line as well. So the add roles identity role when we're adding the Asp Net identity system. So that just that hooks into that underlying table we were looking at earlier, where the identity roles are. So that was in here. That's kind of hooking into that to know where the roles are and pull them out and stuff like that. So with all of that in place, I think we should be good to go. What would be a good idea here? We could try, it might be good to print out on here what roles we're in. That would be handy. So we'll use that authorized view that we were talking about earlier, because it's saying that's a great way to just show some UI if someone is authorized or not. And to make this really, really easy, we could just say roles, and our roles admin. And we'll put in here a p tag and say, you're an admin. So with that in place, we will refresh. Cool. So we're not logged in, so we're not seeing anything. So if I go to login now, log in, and voila, you're an admin.
Very nice.
So it's worked. So our role is now added at the server side. It's been included in that token that's being sent down. Now, I really, really want to show this off, because this should have hopefully be able to see what we're talking about here. So I'm going to take this and let's go back over here again. Now we should be able to get this. Oh, this is killing me today.
It doesn't want to share the role information.
It's not. I'm sure it's in here, but now I'm getting worried that I was doing some stuff with Azure B2C, and that uses a slightly kind of different thing. And I'm worried that I'm just kind of getting confused about the two. Oh, no, there we go. I was using the wrong one.
There you go.
Perfect. So there's our claim included in our token now. So before we did all that work to add that role claim in, that wasn't there. That wouldn't have been there, even with adding that stuff into the backing database. Giving us access to that role or putting us in that role. Without doing what we just done, this wouldn't be here. But here's an example of what I was talking about. Why we need that custom what do I call it? Things. Claims principal factory. That's it. You can see here that we've just got a key value pair of role and admin. So what we'll do is, if we go back over here, just to show what I'm talking about, I'm going to add us into another role. So let me just quickly.
While you do that, there was questions about, can you have multiple authorized views on a page and have multiple role attributes on them? Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Yeah. So let's call this one, like, just for keeping it simple, we'll call this one super admin. And we'll just grab another GUID here as well, and we'll pop that in. And then we'll do the same thing as we did before. So we'll take that, we'll go over to this, and we'll put in that role. And hold on, I'm in my user table again. Put that in there. Cool. So now we're in two roles. So we're in admin, and we're a super admin, whatever that means. So if we come back and come back in here again, now I think, if I'm hoping I'm right here, that has been updated. Ooh. So you can see now instead of getting a key value pair, we're getting this this array now. It's obviously still a key value pair, but the value is now an array, not just a single value. And this is what that custom claims principal factory is doing. It's recognizing that and stripping both of these out and putting them into the claims principal, the claims identity, in the correct way that system understands. So we can see we've got both of these now. So if we come back here and see what that looks like, we can actually like check this out by we can go like admin and like super admin. I think actually I don't need a comma. I think it's just a space. So yeah. Oh, maybe not. Is it a comma? Maybe it is a comma.
I know I've seen Steve Sanderson do this.
Yeah, there we go.
Did that work? Was it a comma?
It was a comma. It was
I was going to say, if it's not a comma, it's going to be an array.
Yeah. So now we're seeing that you're an admin bit. Now, the interesting thing is that this is like an or, not like an and. So this is like if you're an admin, like, or you're a super admin, you get to see this. Not like you have to be an admin and a super admin. So that's worth like being aware of. Because if you want to show a piece of information that you only want available to people in certain roles, and you add all those roles thinking that that's the combination you need to view this, that's not quite how it works. It's going to be, like I say, it's an or, not an and. So I haven't really found a great way around that outside of like nesting authorized views, but I don't know if you've come across that one, Ed, and if you found anything for that.
I haven't played around with the roles feature too much. I think we answered some questions though, because people were asking, can you nest these? Yes, you can. Matter of fact, you are already nesting them in the current view. You just can't see it because the other authorized view you're nested inside of is up the tree a bit. It's in you have one in main, is it? Main layout?
Yes.
One of the other tags has one, or pages has one. So you're already nesting views. So yes, you can.
Yeah, so that's perfectly valid if you want to do it.
Although clunky, but
it's clunky. Yeah, you probably wouldn't want to actually do this, but if you did have a need, if that was a thing you needed to do, then you could do that perfectly fine. That's not a problem.
Yeah, that would result in an and type of scenario.
This would give you that and scenario. So yeah, if this was a case where we, like say, you wanted super admins to see both, this would work.
Somebody's asking, is there a programmatic way to check for the role, such as like if user.role is in role? I don't know if we have access to that.
So
there?
So cascading parameter. So what we can do is that we looked at this earlier with the app component. We said that we have this cascading authentication state. So if we want to do procedural stuff, we can like request an instance of that. So we can it's an authentication authentication state task, I thought it was, or is it authentication state? Let's, I don't know. Let's do that. I want to check if this is like. No, that's the user. That's the there we go. So user claims, and then what would you could, I guess you could go like where. Oh god, this is gonna get fun. I'm doing this completely off the top of my head. So So that'd be where type is equal to like role.
Somebody in chat room is suggesting the authentication state provider.
Yeah, that's what I was after. So yeah, that's it. That's weird. I thought that didn't show on IntelliSense. So yeah, so this one is the one I was thinking about. So this one, get authentication state sync.
And you've been going for quite a while here, Chris. If you don't mind, I'll take. I'll share my screen here in a moment and show some work that you can do with grabbing the user token and all that stuff. Give you a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that would work like that, and then you could, like say, you got access to the user, and you can go to claims and go and find a particular claim, and then do something based on that claim. That should work. Okay, I think there's probably a cleaner way to do that, but off the top of my head.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is new to everyone, so we're learning some things as we go here too. I know I was learning a bit while I was working on my little side project.
Yeah, it's a complex. I mean, auth is a complex subject, generally speaking. Like in 2020, we still don't have a way to really simplify this stuff very well. So yeah, there's a lot to learn and keep track of with this, and it's definitely evolved a lot very recently with Blazor. So yeah.
So let's see. I'm gonna swap views with you for a few. Again, you've been talking for a good part of an hour and a half almost. So it goes
really?
by quick, doesn't it?
Oh God, I had no idea.
So,
I do apologize. I hope this has been useful.
No, this is great. I think everybody's enjoying it, and I know how exhausting it can be. So I'm going to give you a break and let you just hang back for a minute. If you'd like to see what I'm typing out, you can pull up the Twitch stream. It's going to be a little bit of a delay between what I type and what you hear me say over the Skype call. So it might be a little awkward. I can also try a screen share if that would help better for you. Just let me know which one you'd like, and I can share my screen with you. But I've got an app here that I've been working on. Let's give it a quick run, and I'll show you the page that I want to kind of show how to work on some of the authentication bits with. So I have this blazing coffee warehouse that I've been working on, and this has some of the Telerik UI bits in it, so you'll see some of that stuff as well. But I have a page for managing products here, and notice I've got the authentication part, and it is asking me to log in, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. And for a very brief second, you might have seen one of the custom messages come up in one of these little dark panels. So that's where I was saying there was like unstyled text just flying across my page. It's very brief, but it's awkward for the user. So that's where that custom authentication UI bits were nice to have. But I want to come into manage products, and I want to add an item in here or update an item that doesn't have any nutrition information in it. And you can see my first item has a store koozie pack of 5, costs about $5. For some reason, it has nutrition information. So I was playing with my data already, so I've added nutrition information to a pack of koozies. And for some reason, they have caloric value, in case you eat them, I suppose. But it's a PDF file that's been uploaded and attached to that record. I'm going to add another one of those, and I've turned off the code to purposely cause an error. And I'm going to click Edit here, and I've got a file upload component. This is a Telerik UI for Blazor file upload. So it lets me just specify a URL, and it's going to send the file up to the server and let the server process the file. So I'm going to come in and select nutritioninformation.docs, and notice I've got a red line here. There's an error uploading this file. So I'm going to come in and inspect this, and let's see if we've got a console error. So server responded with a status of 401. So that's an authorization error right there. So it's not authorizing us to hit this endpoint and upload that. And the reason is I'm accessing data through the same Web API endpoint on this page. And if we look at the code, let's go into Solution Explorer and grab the Manage Products page. When I get data from the server and put it in the data grid, I'm doing HTTP post as JSON async, and then this HTTP client is handling the authentication header for us. So when I call HTTP post as JSON async, all of the authentication header and all of that is handled by Blazor and by that HTTP client, and it's kind of abstracted away from me. But on the file upload component, the file upload is handling a request internally, and I am giving a save URL, which is on that same authorized endpoint, and I have the ability to go in and modify the request before it goes off to the server. So I'm not specifying a HTTP context for the file uploader. I have to do some custom code here to kind of manage the file upload experience and make sure it's including the tokens and things that I need for that to happen. So what we don't want to have is a file upload component that is so much of a black box that it's doing things without your knowledge and permission. So this leaves us with a little bit more of a flexible upload experience, but we're also responsible for a little bit more of the behaviors, and they're not encapsulated for us like they are with HTTP context. So in this on upload handler, this is an event the file upload component is going to fire before the upload takes place. So we can do any modifications. Maybe we want to add something to the file, add something to the header request, you name it, we can do that in here. So for example, I want to add some custom data to the request to let the server know which product ID I'm attaching this file to. So I'm sending the selected product up with it. And so the database, it can be added to the record in the database. But I also need the authorization token, so I show up as an authorized user when I hit this endpoint. You can see the endpoint right here. It's save URL. And then I'm using Navigation Manager, which is an interface that's available in Blazor to get the URI for the application, because I need the fully qualified URI here. So I'm going to say, give me the application's URI / API products add file, because I'm going to hit that endpoint. And I'm going to call this save URL, and I need the authentication token. So this is how you get an authentication token in a client-side Blazor application. So the first thing we need to do, I'm going to scroll up to the top here, and I am going to inject a interface that is available for us in Blazor, and it is the iAccess token provider. So I've got the iAccess token provider instance here, and now down in my upload handler, I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this, and I'm going to say, give me the token result from access token provider request access token. So this access token provider is actually going to make a call to let's see if I can find it. We talked about this earlier, Chris. This is going out to the OIDC Configuration Controller.
Yeah, in the server.
Yeah, it's grabbing the token, the authorized token for the user there. So that's why we have to wait, because it's actually making a call to that. And then once we have the result, we can try to get the token, because we may not get a token if the user is not actually authenticated. So we'll do a try get token. One thing that's nice about .NET or C#8, I believe this was introduced, we can use an out variable. So we can say out without having to specify above this call the actual var. So I can just say out var instead, and that will new up an inline variable of token. So this is now my token. And then I can set the request header. So I can say E, which is my event argument for the upload component, e.requestheaders.add. Then I'm going to set my authorization token, and I'm going to set the value of it to bearer space token.value. So token.value actually has all of that token encoded information that you were showing when we had your screen up just a minute ago. You decrypted that token to see what was inside of it. That's the information that's going in value, is the encrypted token value. So we'll save that and then rerun the app again. So now, actually, let's pull this up in Fiddler as well so we can see it just a little bit better. Just one thing I like is Fiddler will let me see the traffic going back and forth. And we'll go to our app. I may need to log in again. This may actually fail one more time, depending on if that token is stale or not. So we'll see if this this works right away. If not, we'll just need to log back in again. I'm going to select the file, and it's uploading, and notice we got a green bar here, and it says done. So if I hit update, that record now has a PDF file attached. And if I go back to Fiddler, and I look at my call to API/products add file, and I'm going to go into headers here. You can actually see the request header for that call. We scroll this down, and then under security, you see authorization :bearer, and then there's my token in line. So that's the token I fetched with that access token provider. So if you need to, for some reason, get those bearer tokens and use them for some authentication bits, that's how you get them on a client-side Blazor application. So that's pretty good stuff. Let's see, I had something else I wanted to address in here. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was a question from chat. A lot of folks were asking about customizing the login experience. So we didn't really get into the Razor Pages part of this. I'm going to log out, log back in, so we can see the login part here. So this is actually happening in Razor Pages, and you'll notice pretty much on any demo that you see of this authentication experience, the theme is not matching the rest of the application. And that's a little bit of a thorn in the side of developers, but it is what it is. Again, there's so many front ends that we'd have to cover that you have to kind of leave this in a template where developers are on their own to manage how it looks and feels, and if they want to rewrite that UI in their native application framework. So whether using Blazor or Angular or whatever, they chose, the ASP.NET team chose to default to Razor Pages. So when you do start a new project and you choose identity, you're going to get an areas folder on the server that says areas, identity, pages, and this is a little Razor Pages application that's bundled inside of a Razor class library. And you actually can't see the pages for all of the views that belong to identity. You can see them here if you go in and log in. And I go back to my profile and click on, say, email, password, two-factor authentication, personal data. I can download and delete. This is all being managed through a bunch of pages that we're not seeing in our project. That's because they're all embedded in a DLL file. So if you want to see these and modify these, what you need to do is go into your application. Let's see if I can find it the first time the right way. And we're going to, let's see, new scaffolded item. There we go. And if I scroll through new scaffolded item here, you'll see on the left-hand side, we have identity. So this is the scaffolding tool for identity that's going to reveal all of those views that are available in the Razor component DLL file. So the way this works is similar to if you've ever done work with like WordPress or Joomla or any of those type of systems. There's like an override mechanism here. If .NET finds a page with the same name in the file structure, it will override the file that is in the DLL assembly. So that's what this scaffolder is going to do. It's going to produce those override files for us. So if I hit identity here, hit add, I get a huge set of checkboxes that allows me to override any of those views that are in my identity experience. Now, there's a lot. There's a lot, and this is what we were talking about earlier. It's a lot to upkeep. So if you're going to port this to, say, Angular or React or Blazor, native Razor components for Blazor, there's a lot of pages for you to go through and modify and make into that custom UI experience. So there's quite a few here. I can hit override files and I can get all of them. There's also a mention earlier where we talked about file new project and selecting identity. And when you're in Visual Studio, that defaults to local DB. And if you're on the command line, that defaults to SQLite. If you don't start with identity, you can actually come in here and scaffold it. And notice here's a checkbox here to use SQLite instead of SQL Server. So if you don't have identity at all, you can start with SQL Server in Visual Studio that way. So the UX there is kind of a bit disjointed from the command line, but it is available in Visual Studio, at least at that point. So we can create all of these, and they will populate this areas folder. I'm on a safe Git branch here, so I'll go ahead and try this out just to see what we get. The first thing we need to do is pick our DB context. I'm going to hit add, and there was a fail generating these views. So I may have an update that needs to run on my dependencies first. So it will look, and if there are any dependencies that are out of date or maybe conflicting versions, you're going to see a screen like that. So let's see what happens when I pull up. It took a little bit to pull up NuGet here. Yeah, see, I have 17 updates pending on this, so I may need to update these first. Let's give it a shot and hope it doesn't break anything. We'll go ahead and update.
Nothing ever went wrong on live demos updating stuff.
Never. Never. Update all the things. Yeah. Let's see if there's any Windows updates available while we're at it.
Yeah, I decided to update the latest preview of Visual Studio this morning because, you know, I like to live that way.
So, this is a good thing to show, I think, on the stream, though, is I hit that dialog box that was like, there's an error, scaffolding, roll back your code, all this stuff. The fix is actually just to go in and make sure you're on the latest version. And the scaffolding tool needs to be on the same version as the code, basically. So you may have to do some updates before it'll work. So we'll try this again. We'll say scaffold item, choose identity, hit add, override all the files. Let's see here. Oh, it's worth mentioning too, you can specify the path in case you've moved yours to another location. I'm going to keep it under areas because I know that will for sure break things. We'll hit add, and now it's getting farther this time. So the quick fix there is if you run into an error, oh no, maybe it didn't totally fix things. One of the packages, please install the following package. So it's looking for SQL Server, and I'm going to say use SQLite instead of SQL Server here. And it's actually not letting me. That's interesting. So I don't know what's locked that down, but it looks like I've found a flaw in the system here. I'm using SQLite, which is the other conflict in that dialog box. And for some reason, it is not letting me set up the SQLite checkbox here. So that's interesting. So it looks like if you're using SQLite, the you may have to rescaffold everything to make this work. So another option here would be to scaffold these in a brand new project and copy them over, because again, they're going to override any views that are in this area. So I could actually manually create them, or I could create them with the scaffolder in another project and just copy those files over and then start manually, editing those things. And they'll look similar to this login.partial or loginpartial.cshtml. And these are all Razor pages. So they use things like tag helpers and HTML helpers to generate those views. So you're going to be stepping outside of the Blazor ecosystem to do that. Now, I did have an interesting message from somebody on LinkedIn yesterday, and I didn't have time to dig into this before the show today, so I'm going to pull it up in a gist. And I'm going to share this with the audience if they want to check it out. But somebody pinged me on Twitter. Brian Douglas was his name. And he said, you might want to look into this for the show. You can actually use Razor components with auth. And this is how it works. And he gave me the full breakdown. And I'd love to try this out sometime. I just haven't had time to do that. So there's the gist shared with the audience there if they want to check it out too. But there's some other projects that use Blazor out there, such as, let's see, it's listed in here. What is it called again? Octane, I think, is it?
Oh, Octane, yeah. I nearly said CMS. I don't think that's how they refer to it, actually.
I said projects, but
yeah,
it's a CMS-like project. It's a
module-based framework.
Yeah, kind of like a .NET Nuke or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's mentioned in here as well. So there's some other work being done in the Blazor ecosystem to create application frameworks. And it looks like they've kind of stepped their toe into this. So he's piggybacking off of some of their work as well. But there's all of the steps to do this. And, from creating a sign-in.razor, and he tells me what methods I need to run to get all of the cookie authentication bits and stuff to make this happen. And he says it takes about 15 minutes, and there you have your Blazor port of the login bits. So I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to kind of share that with everybody since I didn't have time to look into it in depth, but I think it'd make a great demo sometime to show people how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about this. I actually did write a blog series on authentication with Blazor quite a while ago. And in that, I did actually do all of the sign-up pages in Blazor.
Oh, excellent. If you want to share those in the chat room as well.
Yeah, so I think someone's pinged this in already, but ping that link in there.
Oh, hey, Brian is in the chat, by the way. So thanks for the tip, Brian. Appreciate that. And he's put a better link up there to his completed GitHub repo. But I appreciate you reaching out and joining us today. That's really nice. And then Chris has shared his blog series as well. What's in there, Chris?
Yeah, so I did a blog series about various auth bits in client-side and server-side Blazor. And some of the client-side stuff is a bit out of date now. There's better ways to do it. I do want to update it. But in there, I actually didn't use any of the Razor pages. So if you scroll down a bit further, if you keep going, probably about a third of the way down. So this is starting from complete from scratch. And this is back before we had the auth template. And then if we hit about there, so scroll up slightly, Ed, sorry. Where
a little delay.
Oh, sorry, I'm lagging, aren't I? So my bad. There's some API endpoints that replicate that do all of the signing up. So you've got a login controller that does all the generation of the token. This was before there was all that stuff built in. But then I think it's just slightly up from where you are now. There's a lot like a register model, and then above that is a little code snippet from the API where the endpoints are to create a user. So there's a post there. It uses the user manager from Asp Net Identity to create the actual user, and then the UI is all created in Blazor components, which is a bit further down. And it just posts this data up to the API, and then it's using the same mechanism that's behind those Razor pages we've been looking at, but it just does it through an API rather than through a Razor page. And then other than that, it's just building the UI out in Blazor, and off it goes. So like I say, that it could do with some updates. There's some stuff now that makes some of this a bit easier, which I'll definitely look at getting this updated. But we've been talking about this, and this is just completely and utterly fallen out of my brain that I wrote this.
Yeah, Brian is saying, by the way, that he liberally borrowed from you, Chris. So your blog did not go to waste. People are reading it and sharing the information, so it's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, so good stuff there. I think that answers some questions that we had earlier that we didn't quite. I tried not to answer them at the moment because I knew we were going to get into this part of it. But you can edit these screens, and we've actually got a working demo of this too. Thanks, Brian here. But people were asking quite a bit about this stuff, and yes, you can customize these screens. You can put whatever you'd like in them. You can word them however you'd like. It's a matter of either overriding those CSHTML files or creating your own logins through Blazor like this. So these are all working with native Blazor UI components. Question, does Progress intend to create a login component for Blazor? That is something that we need to discuss, but is not something that is on the roadmap. So if you go to feedback.telerik.com and if you create a line item in there, it's something that people can upvote, and if there's enough interest in it, that's something we might consider making. And then Marin from our support team is chiming in with an upcoming roadmap item that will help with these type of experiences. So we'll have like a masked login text box and all sorts of goodies coming. Great question there. Let's see. So you covered roles and using the authentication view to show and hide UI bits. All sorts of great stuff there. I covered a little bit of how to retrieve a token and do a file upload. Let's see, is there anything else that we feel like we're missing?
We could, in your app, I don't know if we've got that scenario with the broken HTTP client that requires the auth and doing the typed HTTP client. That might be a cool thing to show.
Yes, I actually have it implemented, but I don't have a example, but we can create one really quick because I've gotten enough code there to get us started. So that's awesome. Thank you for reminding me of that. I totally forgot. So what Chris is talking about is we had a question early on, or we covered early on the fact that when you add authentication to your application, let's go into startup, and I know what else I want to cover. Swagger is another one I want to cover. Don't let me forget that. When we add maybe I don't. Yeah, I do. It's in the other. Let's see. I've abstracted it away a little bit. Maybe no. That's Swagger.
That bit. Yeah, you want to be in the client project for the.
Oh, am I not in it? Oh,
is that the start?
That's what it is. Yeah. So when I closed the other tree, I didn't see that there was one above it. Thank you. So here we go. So Chris was covering this earlier. He was showing when you add the HTTP client for the authorized endpoint, you give it a name like this. So it'll say your app dot server API. And if we go over to, let's see, where is it on the server? You can actually see this being consumed somewhere because you'll hit an error for it if you name it wrong. Yeah. So that ID actually gets passed up here through this configuration client ID. So that named HTTP, that HTTP instance will actually get passed along to this controller, and it'll show up here. So if you were to name that wrong, that's why I don't like magic strings, because I actually did name this wrong and was getting errors. That will fail. So you have a named HTTP client here, and it is by default now the HTTP client that is used throughout the application. So let's go over to a page and remove the authorized token from the controller. So let's go to sales. And my sales controller, I'm going to take the authorized token off. So you can imagine in this scenario, it may not be so obvious, but if you think of something like GitHub, as a non-authenticated user, I might want to go out to GitHub and view somebody's GitHub projects. And I don't need to be authenticated to view their list of projects. I need to be authenticated if I want to manage those projects. So let's pretend for a minute we have a scenario like that, and I want to be able to see the sales data for some reason on authenticated. So I've taken the auth attribute off of the controller action, and I'll also go over to the UI portion, and I'm going to take the auth attribute off of it as well. And then if I come in to my application now, you would expect that since I removed the auth token from both the client view and the HTTP endpoint on the server, that no authentication happens. And if I go to my sales page, it worked. Let's see, that should not have worked. Let me make sure I'm getting the latest version here. Let's recompile this. When you want your demos to fail and they do not. It's okay, we can do this from scratch in a minute if this doesn't work. I don't know why this is working, to be honest. I don't know if I've added something to my app to allow that to happen or not. So let's start from scratch. We'll start over from the beginning. Let's do File, New Project. Chrome cache credentials. Actually, yeah, that may be it. Thank you, chat room. Before I go spinning up a new project, let's try this real fast. Let me, first of all, let's log out. Then let's do an inspect here so I can empty cache and hard reload the page. So now those credentials should be gone. Let's go to this page. All right, there we go. So I'm logged out, and there's no authorization on this page. Thank you, chat room. That was it.
I know.
So I had my authentication. First of all, I was logged in and it was cached. But notice I've got this error. So there's an unhandled exception, and there's no data being displayed in my grid. I have 0 records. What's going on here? If I inspect this, and it's in my console, and this is something I expect a lot of people to run into. Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah, I've already had I must have had almost double figures, I think, of people message me on various platforms asking, why is this broken?
Including myself. Because Chris is the one that showed me this, by the way. Because we were on a call last week prepping for today, and I was like, why doesn't this work? And he's like, oh man, not this again. So it says there's an unhandled exception. The access token is not available exception. So even though I don't have an authorization attribute on the view, and there's no authorization required by the client, the HTTP client is, through dependency injection, using the authorized HTTP call that is set up in the startup or program.cs
Programs,
here.
yes.
So it is looking for an authorized through this base authorization message handler. That's a wordy one, man.
I know, yeah.
Naming things is hard.
It
Uh,
is.
so by default, it is looking for authorization, and it doesn't have a token because it's going to go fetch a token, and it's not going to have one, and it's going to try to send it without a token, and then it dies. So it hits an exception on that HTTP client. So you'll notice this is not something that is addressed in the docs. Above on line 24, I have another add HTTP client called public client, and that one does not require the base address authorization message handler. Geez, say that 10 times fast.
I know.
Say,
I want to say that after a couple of
after,
tequilas.
yeah, say that after 2 hours of streaming. So public client, if we're going to dig into this now. So I can do add HTTP client. Public client is a type that I'm going to register. If I dig into that type, it's really just a simple wrapper. So I'm just creating a little abstraction around HTTP client. And I'm going to say that I have a property called HTTP client. And it's just exposing that default HTTP client there. So now I have two HTTP clients available, and I can go fetch this one if I need an unauthorized view for something. So we'll go back to sales, and instead of getting HTTP client, the default instance, I'm going to get, let's see, it is a public client. We could do this with named clients as well. But I don't like magic strings. Like I said, I named one incorrectly earlier, and that caused an issue. So let's see, what namespace is this in? Services. So I need to put it in the right namespace here. I could put a using statement, but I'm only using this in one place. So I'm just going to say public client is my new HTTP client, and I'm going to call that HTTP. And then I have to make a small change here because this is going to be .client, HTTP.client, to go inside of that and fetch my HTTP client instance that I set up without authentication. Now I can call post as JSON async on that. And if I rerun the application, it failed. Let's see. Public client does not contain a definition. Oh, I have another reference here. Sorry. We can change that one now. So it's just, it was missing a property. So now I should be able to run that. So I just had to unwrap that HTTP client basically. And now I should be able to go to sales without logging in. Notice I'm not logged in. I have data this time, yay. And I can see my page without authorization. If I log in, go ahead and log into that one. I can still go back to sales and there's no errors. It still works because it's still resolving the correct HTTP client. And I can also visit the views that do require logins now. So that takes care of that issue. And I think a lot of people are going to hit that. And it sounds like you've had a lot of DMs regarding that subject as well, Chris. So
yeah, I'll be honest. I've got to the point now. I was like, I meant to blog about this when I first saw it because I thought it's going to be something that comes up. So I've actually started the blog post now, so that will come out next week. Actually, I'll blog about this and explain exactly what's breaking and how you can fix it. So yeah, I'll have that. I can just point people at that. That'll make life easier.
Nice. So the next one I want to get to is I'm not going to pretend I'm any kind of Swagger expert. Viewers came in the chat room like a week ago and said you should really add Swagger to your app because Swagger is the thing to do. And I was like, I've seen it. It looks really cool, but it looks like it take forever for me to learn it. And they took about 30 minutes to show me via chat room how to do this. So now I have a Swagger endpoint for my application. So I can hit localhost Swagger and it will pop up all of my endpoints. So I can come into, say, my products controller and I can try it out and I can fetch data from my controller and see it right here. And then it also gives me schemas for all my data. It's really cool. It gives you like the JSON response you expect to get back and all this good stuff. Then I added authorization to my app and it all broke. So let's check out what that experience involves. So if I go to my client app under program, no, actually, sorry, it's on my server. I always get these confused. Let's go to server and then under startup. And I have a little wrapped function here that says configure Swagger. And to configure Swagger, you basically just add a NuGet package in these couple lines of code, and it enables everything for you. So we're going to add Swagger, use Swagger UI, and this generates that page that you just saw where I can say /Swagger, and it gives me everything. So those 3 lines of code pretty much do everything for me. And then, let's see if I can find this here. Yep, it's kind of hidden away here. There is also a quick line of code here that you say add Swagger doc. That is the other service that you need to register. Other than those few lines of code, that's all you need out of the box. When you add authentication, however, and this is well documented on the Swashbuckle plugin that I'm using on their website, you need to add this bearer security definition. So my endpoints require a bearer token through authentication to make them work. So if you add this add security definition bearer, and then it takes a schema of what that token looks like, and then you add the security requirement that includes that bearer token, it will give you a UI to enter this information into your Swagger endpoint. So let's go back, pretend that we just added that. This button will then show up here that says Authorize. Okay, so let's go to our app for a minute. So I'm going to go over to localhost here. I'm already logged in, so I'm just going to hit any old endpoint here that it has a authorization on it. We'll go over to the Manage Products page for a second, and I have Fiddler open. And Fiddler, again, I can go in and see a request, and there's my security token. And I'm going to click on the security token and say copy value only. And then I'm going to go back to Swagger. So go back to my Swagger page. I'm going to click Authorize. And notice it says bearer API key. And it says, for example, bearer equals 12345, etc. So I'm going to come into the value box and paste in my token, the value I just copied out of Fiddler, because Fiddler is sitting in the middle, like a man in the middle, sniffing all of the HTTP traffic. And I was able to just grab that bearer token out, and I can click Authorize here. And it says that I'm logged in now, so I can close this. And now I can come to any of my endpoints and see the little lock button or lock icon. They're all the closed lock positions now. It means I'm logged in and I can actually access these. So I can come in here and say, try it out. And I get my execute button. I can click on that. And I get a response out of my endpoint. Pretty cool stuff. This took a little bit of looking to figure out how this gets done, because I knew it was a common practice, but I was confused at first. because you add auth to a project that didn't have it already, and then you go back to Swagger and everything's broken.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny actually. I've used Swagger at a previous role, and we did the same thing. When we started development and we didn't have protection on initially, and then we added it, and then this broke, and then we spent like a week trying to work out how to fix it.
I thought it was going to be a lot more involved, so things have probably come along a bit. Let's see if this worked. I was trying to show the broken response that you get back. Yeah, there it is. 401 unauthorized. If you're not logged in, this is the error that you're going to get. And you can even see in here it's looking for a bearer token. It's missing. So it says unauthorized. And then if you go back and authorize, that's how you get this to work. Now I have data again. Yeah, so it was just a few lines of code here. This was not something I wrote. I just copied and pasted it out of documentation, basically, and it worked out of the box. So actually, let me take this. I don't remember where I found this, to be honest. So I'm going to copy this, and I'll paste it in a gist as well and share it with the chat in case anybody wants to like bookmark that, because they may run into something similar. So those are some of the things that I've run into. Did we have anything else from the chat room? Or Chris, can you think of anything that we might need to cover before we go? We're running close to 2 hours now, and I think we've probably covered about as much as we can.
Yeah, I think sort of anything past this becomes quite involved. Like if you were to use things like Azure AD-B2C and things like that, that's all now supported with Blazor WebAssembly. But the project templates are much more tricky to generate. You have to use you can only use the .NET CLI and stuff like that, which can be a bit fiddly. But again, there's good docs sort of explaining it all. But you can't just go like file new project through the GUI. You are going to have to drop to the command line to do that. But you can do Azure AD, Azure AD B2C via that route as well. So it's that you really can kind of authenticate against any kind of the big common stuff now. But I don't think there's anything else that I think we can cover today. I don't think.
Mr. Smurfy is asking, is there a place to look at how you could implement CRUD permissions? So just off the top of my head, what I would suggest is in my project here, you could take a look. I don't have specific permissions for individual users per se, but what you can do is look at the server side. I'm doing CRUD operations on, let's see, the products controller has full CRUD operations. I'm using a blanket authorized statement up here. You could also set authorized specifically on endpoints, and you could set roles for those endpoints as well. And another thing that you could optionally do is similar to how we did the unauthorized HTTP client. You could set named clients for specific functions in your app as well. So there's a lot of different things that you could do. I think it would be more beneficial to look into what type of security things that you need to accomplish and maybe figure out what the best practices are for that. But there's a lot of different ways that you could go about doing that. So let's go ahead and wind things down here, Chris. So first of all, thank you for donating your time today to come out and talk to everybody on Blazor Authentication. Make sure, and I'll share this on the screen as well. I know you shared at least one blog post, but feel free to share anything else that you'd like. I know you've got some NuGet packages out there that are really great as well, that are pertaining to Blazor. So you have the Blazored NuGet packages.
That's it. Yeah. So there's an organization on GitHub. There's about 9 or 10 packages on there now for various different things. So yeah, it's hopefully people find them useful. So yeah, you can check those out. Obviously, my blog, but yeah, and I will caveat the blog that I'm usually very good with blogs in terms of being relatively consistent. You usually get something out once a week or once every couple of weeks at worst. But I am writing a book at the moment, so that's taking up a large chunk of my time. So blog posts may be a bit sporadic for the next sort of 11 months or so.
And folks should not leave yet because we have prizes to give away. So Sarah is queuing me up to pick 4 numbers between 1 and 131. So we'll go, let's see. I will grab 10, 13, 22, and 18. So those are the numbers. That is the first, and I will remind myself to do the last time. I just picked all the kids' ages. That's all my kids' ages. So that is them. So there's your numbers. So we'll give away prizes to them. I think, did I paste the Blazored in chat? Yeah, I did. Okay, so Blazored is out there. So I'm going to be on Jeff Fritz's channel tomorrow talking about NuGet packages. And I think we're going to look at your local storage package tomorrow on C# Fritz's channel, Chris. So
cool.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Yeah, I'll be about. I should be about on the stream or in the chat rather. So yeah, awesome. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that and some others. But there's some resources from Chris out there, and then of course we've got. Let's see, the demo that I showed you today. I have on our Telerik GitHub page. So that one is called Blazing Coffee. It's still a little tiny bit of a work in progress. It's starting to get buttoned up now, but I will give you a heads up to make sure you look at the requirements section. I'm using personally the commercial license for Telerik UI for Blazor, which is compatible with the trial license, but you just need to add the word trial in a couple spots in the dependencies that are in the project. So just give you a quick heads up, you're going to run into an error or two if you don't go in there and fix those, and make sure you have the trial versions of the Telerik assemblies in there. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It should seed itself and migrate SQLite databases and everything for you. So there's some pretty good stuff in there as well. There's CRUD operations and file uploads and authentication and all kinds of goodies in there to play around with, and even some really cool theming capabilities. And I think I've showed this maybe too many times, but I absolutely love this feature. I'm geeking out to my own thing. I'm sorry, but I love this. This is too cool. So the Telerik UI for Blazor components support theming at themebuilder.telerik.com. And if you go to Theme Builder, select Blazor, you can come in and just build themes right here in the UI. And you can download those as CSS or SAS files. And I have one in my Blazing Coffee app that I have added a couple special media queries to. I showed this yesterday, so if this is old hat now, I'm sorry. But this is...
It is cool.
I'm going to geek out to it one more time. I'm going to open up my theme settings for the OS. So I'm in the Windows theme settings. And where's the theme color? There we go. Color. I'm going to choose light from my settings. And like magic, the entire app just reskins to the light theme. And I think this is just the coolest thing.
It is awesome.
Thanks. And the reason it works is not anything Blazor related even. It's just the fact that we have SAS themes and we can do stuff like this with colors and theming, but also they added a media query to the CSS spec that lets us look at the OS preferences for the light and dark color themes. So it's actually like a no-code type of solution here, where I'm just inspecting the media queries and setting one or the other CSS file to show. So that one's a lot of fun. So that's in there as well. And I can't get out of my Zoom. There it goes. It wouldn't let me go. The escape button wasn't working. So that is up on GitHub. To make a long story short, you can find that up there on GitHub. Now, if I can only win a UI designer to do stuff like what's on the screen, I love it. So that's one of the benefits of the Telerik UI stuff is they look good. I dabble in design, but I'm by no means a professional designer. So I appreciate the compliment. Sarah, are we good on the prizes there? And do we have any more upcoming shows? So Sarah is not only our wonderful Twitch producer, but my boss and lead of the DevRel team. So let's raid InstaFluff. All right, let's go ahead and raid InstaFluff. So we'll say goodbye again. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. We're going to go raid InstaFluff here, it looks like.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been awesome, and I hope it's been useful for everybody.
It's been a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
So we're queuing up for a raid on InstaFluff. We're counting down. Let's see. Oh, sorry, the channel for local storage and stuff. Oh, Sarah beat me to it. Man, she's fast. She's so fast. So we're going to be on C# Fritz's channel tomorrow. And then I also have, Sarah, if you can pop my channel up there as well. I stream every Friday about Blazor, usually on my show, but we're going to raid, or not raid, but we're going to, I'm going to guest on Jeff's show tomorrow instead. And but if you come to my channel, usually on Friday, I will be there talking about Blazor and tinkering with projects. So you can find me there or the Code It Live channel throughout the rest of the week. We've got other great folks from our team as well. And I just heard some follows come in. Appreciate those. We're going to go see what InstaFluff is up to now. So we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.